At 6:07 a.m., October the 27th, 2025, thick morning fog covered the Donetsk steppe, where visibility had dropped to less than 984 feet. A column of 30 Russian armored vehicles was moving straight onto the T-0504 route leading towards Shakov. But what none of the Russian soldiers inside that convoy knew was this. Every movement they made had already been captured by the reconnaissance and fire control network of Ukraine's 93rd Brigade from the moment they rolled out of their staging point. High above in the western sky at an altitude of 591 to 722 feet, the electronic eyes of the 93rd Kholodny Yar Brigade were scanning non-stop, tracking the heat trail the convoy left behind as it crawled across the plain. They were Lelika 100 reconnaissance UAVs at high altitude and Mavic 3T drones at mid-altitude, sweeping continuously while flying beyond the detection arc of Russian radars, maintaining complete radio silence, only transmitting compressed data back to the command post every 23 to 27 seconds. The entire armored formation had just moved out of the coverage of Russia's electronic warfare systems positioned near Novorossiysk. Russia was attempting to establish a new mechanized launch pad, one that could put crushing pressure on the entirety of Ukraine's western Donetsk defensive line. To do that, they deployed a sizable force. 8 T-72B3 and T-80B-VM tanks, the primary breakthrough element, 10 BMP-2 and BMP-3 IFVs carrying mechanized infantry and supporting firepower, 5 MTLBs transporting infantry, ammunition and anti-tank teams, 2 UR-77 mine-clearing vehicles, engineering systems designed to blow open corridors, along with multiple Ural and CAM-AZ trucks hauling artillery shells, fuel and communications equipment. The total force was estimated at 150 to 180 soldiers, carrying enough shells and rockets for Russia's general staff to believe they could smash through any Ukrainian defensive outpost on the southwestern axis of Kostiantynivka. But now they were fully exposed, caught in the open between abandoned coal pits with no confirmed forward observation posts on either side. This stretch of land was a natural kill alley with a sight line of barely 164 feet and almost zero chance of escape if ambushed. Ukraine had prepared for this exact moment. Along the sparse tree line to the south, anti-tank strike teams armed with Stugner P missiles, each team consisting of 2 to 3 soldiers, had already been deployed in secrecy. Every launcher was pre-mounted on fixed platforms, camouflaged beneath grass nets and soil mounds. Around them, FPV launch pits were hidden inside old trenches and foxholes, covered with anti-reconnaissance nets to avoid detection from above. Farther back, the 155mm artillery batteries had pre-registered the coordinates of all Russian withdrawal routes, from the edges of the fields to the narrow escape corridor between 2 shallow ridges. All of it combined into a lethal, interlocking web of fire. Inside a forward field command bunker 7.44 miles west of the ambush zone, UAV coordinators from the 93rd Kholodny Yar Brigade were silently watching every movement of the Russian column through a low-latency data link fed by Lelika 100 and Mavic 3 drones. At exactly 6:25 a.m., reconnaissance data showed the Russian convoy inching closer to the kill zone, holding a steady speed of 15.5 miles per hour, with each cluster spaced 1,312 to 1,640 feet apart, and only 1,800 meters from the ambush point. Less than 10 seconds later, the fire authorization code came through. The entire drone strike system shifted into combat mode simultaneously. Armed drones flipped their systems to ready. Control signals jumped onto the operational band. Electric motors hissed alive as FPV drones crawled out of their camouflage pits across the tree line. Up in the distance, the Mavic 3T confirmed targets maintaining speed and formation. At exactly 6:32 a.m., when the Russian convoy was less than 0.5 miles from the kill zone, something in their movement changed. Subtle but perceptible. Rather than sticking to the main dirt track, an easy target for pre-registered artillery, the convoy suddenly split across 3 parallel farm lanes that cut through the fields. On paper, it looked like a smart precaution. Disperse the formation, avoid bunching up, reduce casualties if hit by artillery. But in reality, it only fractured the force into 3 isolated prongs, unable to support or cover one another. To the 93rd Brigade's operators, the Russian formation no longer resembled a mechanized column. It looked like a herd, fragmented, exposed, and ready to be taken apart one by one. Then, abruptly, an anomaly flashed across the reconnaissance screens. A Leleka 100 drone had been hit with sharp interference on the 2.4 GHz band. Its frequency sweep showed a sudden cyclic spike, a textbook signature of active jamming. Within 3 seconds, electronic analysis software pinpointed the origin. A Krasnodar 4 Mini EW system mounted on an MTLB chassis had just activated full-spectrum suppression. If left unchecked, the jamming would wipe the entire drone network, knocking FPVS off course or dropping them from the sky. Instantly, every drone platform switched to counter-jam mode. Recon UAVs activated FHSS, frequency hopping hundreds of times per second across 3 independent encrypted channels to evade interference. FPV strike drones shifted into IMU inertial control mode, relying on gyroscopes and accelerometers to stay on true course without external signals. The master control stream dropped to L-band, which Krasnodar interferes with far less than 2.4 GHz. And to counter GPS spoofing, widely used across the Donbass, the drones auto-compared real trajectory with GPS data. Whenever deviation exceeded 1.5%, the drone instantly severed its GPS link and switched to full INS guidance. The result? Not a single drone drifted off target. Artillery now had coordinates. FPVS now had targets. Stugner P teams along the tree line were now locked and ready. The type of drone used in the Kostiantynivka operation was a one-way FPV kamikaze system, directly controlled by the UAV teams of the 1st Battalion, 93rd Brigade. They were built for one purpose: approach fast, hit the weak point, and self-detonate with absolute precision. With 7-inch props, high-torque brushless motors, custom guidance, and integrated AI, each FPV could independently identify vehicle types: T-72, B-3M, T-80BVM, BMP-2, MTLB, and lock onto weak spots like gun mantlet seams, weld lines, and driver hatch joints. Even under heavy jamming, the drone stayed true using inertial guidance. Maximum error under 6.5 feet. Each drone carried a small HEAT warhead capable of punching through side armor, turret roofs, or engine compartments, especially lethal against BMPS, BTRS, MTLBS, and even tanks if striking their weak points. With adaptive guidance, onboard AI, and autonomous navigation when losing signal, the FPVS were unaffected by Russia's attempts to blind them. And ironically, the Krasnodar's high-power jamming had just turned the EW vehicle into the brightest beacon on the battlefield. The next second, the first kamikaze FPV dove straight into the MTLB carrying the EW suite. 14 seconds later, the warhead tore through the antenna compartment, its rear engine bay still open. The blast shredded the Krasnodar system, incinerating the equipment and the entire crew inside. The jamming signals died instantly. The MTLB burst into a pillar of black smoke on the open steppe. The moment the jamming vanished was the first time the Russian column realized the true scale of the ambush. But by then it was far too late. They were already deep inside the 3-axis kill zone. Some crews frantically swung their turrets. firing 125mm shells blindly into empty fields, shooting at shadows, at panic, at nothing. Several BMPs tried reversing in confusion, crashing into one another or getting stuck in old tire ruts pinned between mud and shallow ditches. And only seconds later, the third wave of FPVS closed in. Right as the lead T-72B3M in the northern prong attempted to pivot mid-turn, unable to complete the maneuver, the drone dropped to 7.5 feet above the ground, approached at a 28-degree angle, and slammed directly into the thin joint between the hull and the turret ring. The warhead detonated inside the primary ammunition compartment. The turret blew skyward, launched off its mount while the overpressure flash incinerated the entire crew. This was the lead vehicle, the one responsible for passing orders forward. Now the formation had lost its head, forced to operate in total disorder. Moments later, a Ural truck loaded with 122mm shells attempted to escape through a side path, but the second FPV intercepted it from the front. The drone struck directly into the center of the cargo bed, packed with artillery rounds. The explosion didn't just destroy the truck. It triggered a chain detonation, each shell cooking off like inverted fireworks. The blast flung metal shards into the BMP beside it, wrecking its steering and sending it pivoting sideways, blocking the escape lane. From the west flank, the third FPV sliced toward an MTLB that was bogged down, hitting the weak point along its left armor plate. The detonation ripped through its engine compartment and command bay. The vehicle split apart, two jagged sections tossed across the ground. Another critical support link for Russia's infantry was gone. Not far away, a BMP-2 tried to reverse sharply to avoid incoming overhead UAVs, but collided with the vehicle behind it. The fourth FPV dove from above, piercing straight through the roof, the thinnest armor zone on the vehicle. Flames burst outward. The rear doors blew open. No one made it out alive. Russia's mechanized infantry capability evaporated on the spot. The T-80BVM, equipped with a tall communications antenna responsible for relaying signals back to the forward command post, was next. The 5th FPV stalked it from the east, closing in before striking the right side of the command bay. The antenna snapped, the comm suite burned out. The vehicle commander collapsed. Every internal coordination link in that cluster was severed. When the UR-77 Meteorit engineering vehicle attempted to deploy its line charge, the 6th drone plunged from 33 feet, driving straight into the explosives container. The warhead ignited the line charge backward, producing a rocket-like backblast. The UR-77 detonated violently, fire streaking across the dry grass, cutting off any possibility of breaching a path for retreat. Russia's engineering assets were eliminated in a single strike, mobility gone. Following the FPV onslaught, the entire Russian formation fractured into isolated clusters. A group of 4 BMPs and MTLBs huddled together along the northern route, struggling to turn but trapped in sticky mud. Another group, 2 T-80 BVMS, 1 BMP and a troop-carrying Ural, attempted to swing west across the field lanes, hoping to loop back behind their original line of advance. The remaining infantry, those who had dismounted, scattered toward the eastern and southeastern mounds, exposed and unsupported. But escape was impossible. From the tree line to the west, Stugner PTGM teams were arranged in an L-shaped kill pattern, each team 656 feet apart, firing crosswise into the flanks of any vehicle that clustered together. From firing positions 5 to 6 miles away, Ukraine's M777 artillery batteries launched 155mm shells in fan-shaped patterns, 3-round salvos targeting the northern and northeastern edges where Russian troops might abandon their vehicles. At this stage, Ukraine no longer needed brute force. They just needed to lock down each cluster and finish targets one by one. In under 5 minutes, the entire Russian mechanized thrust was frozen in the open. Above them, the Lelica 100 recorded every movement, every explosion. According to aggregated data, 15 out of 30 vehicles were completely destroyed. Another 8 vehicles were abandoned, burned out, mechanically failed, or stuck so deep they were unusable. The rest never made it out. Unable to maneuver, unable to regroup, more than 45 Russian soldiers were taken out of the fight, most within a 656-foot radius of the impact zone. Not a single Ukrainian infantryman revealed his position. Not a single rifle round was fired. The entire operation relied solely on UAVs, ATGMs, and artillery, striking from beyond counterfire range. The field southwest of Kostiantynivka had transformed into a 500-meter kill belt, a corridor of flame and twisted metal. Tank hulls lay ripped open, turrets thrown over 328 feet away. Shattered windshields, shredded tires, and charred antennas littered the area like debris from a storm of steel. The dirt road was scorched, cratered with 8 to 12-inch impact pits, evidence of near-range artillery strikes. Black smoke rolled over the scene, thick enough to hang in the air for hours after the fight. After the ambush, Russian forces were forced to halt their advance. The 93rd Brigade held the ground and reinforced defensive positions. The T-0504 route, Russia's intended corridor between Kharkov and Pokrovsk, was closed completely. Russia had no choice but to shut down the road, dispatch recovery teams, and assess the damage. The offensive was halted for more than 48 hours. Several Russian artillery and logistics units had to reroute eastward, adding more than 31 miles to their journey and causing supply delays across the entire southern front. The ambush didn't just ruin a single axis of advance, it crippled the coherence of Russia's entire mechanized push toward Pokrovsk. The 8th Combined Arms Army had to pause operations. Reinforcements from Horlivka were forced into a defensive posture. Holding the Kostiantynivka-Chasiv Yar line, confirmed by ISW, became the linchpin of Ukraine's eastern defense depth. The battle was a textbook example of 21st century warfare, where infantry are no longer shock troops, but the final layer of a 3-tiered kill web. Ukraine delivered a harsh lesson. In modern war, victory is not decided by the number of tanks or the size of a formation, but by the speed of information, the coordination of multi-layered fires, and the will to terminate the target decisively. When the Russian convoy entered the kill zone, they carried the ambition of carving a steel corridor. When they left, only black smoke and charred hulls remained.